Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
You're not kidding. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear, that's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles, and with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields.
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you'd better make the most of it.
Well, guys.
Hello.
Howdy.
It is episode 113, and somehow it just keeps getting better, or at least more numerous. And I don't know. I don't know.
The numbers just keep on rolling up.
The quantity is definitely increasing, even if the quality isn't.
We're quantitatively trending well, and I think that's really all that matters to consumers of content. Not that it's good, just that it is. So,
yes, indeed.
We're here to fulfill that need. And boy, are we going to fulfill it this week with a wonderful and terrible show.
Yeah.
I start off with the most amazing miracle that nobody ever saw.
Yeah, and speaking of not seeing, I am going to talk to us about a saint who may or may not be able to see by the end of the show.
And then I'm going to go ahead and ruin the episode with two terrible, sad stories of Mormon mayhem, violence, blood, and murder.
Boy, do you know how to sell it.
Yeah, know how to bring it home.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
But at least it's contemporary, and that's also part of Mormon Murders.
Super horrifying, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Yep, stupid religious shit is still happening to this day.
Yeah, before we get into that, however, we should mention, once again, we're trying to give a little bit more signal boost to the combined efforts of the site of the Cogdis boys, the Cognitive Dissonance fellas, and the Scathing Atheist crew. They're doing their Vulgarity for Charity one more time. It's a great charity event that they do. They're raising money. It's for a good cause. It's modest needs. Uncle Mark, fill us in. How do we do this?
So
what are they doing?
Modest Needs is amazing. They are an incredible charity that gives direct cash assistance, and apparently the turnaround is pretty quick for people who are not quite poor enough to merit other, the terrible government assistance we have in our country, but are going to be screwed if they don't get some cash to get through the next 24 hours or whatever. And Modest Needs is there for that. Last year, Vulgarity for Charity raised $124,000 for this cause. This year, the goal is over $200,000, and we're well on the way. We're participating in this. So if you can, you go to modestneeds.com. You donate $50. You send that receipt, or 50, whatever you want, but $50 or more will get you a roast from us, us or the Cogdis boys or the Gamcast and Scathing crew and other guest roasters. So you just send your receipt and who you want roasted with a picture of them or whatever thing you want roasted on God's green earth to
someone do Kenny Rogers, just because I want to hear them be Kenny Rogers roasters.
So send it to vulgarityforcharity at gmail.com and wait to hear Tell them we sent you. Tell them we sent you. And you can also request who you want to do the roast. They'll try to accommodate that. I don't think it's a guarantee. But everybody who sends in a roast will get a roast. So please have your $50 or more turn into $100 or more, just like that. And do the right thing, feel good, and that's all that really matters, right?
Great.
Yep.
Let's do a show.
Let's do our show.
Uncle Dan.
Hey, Uncle Doug.
I think as the time has gone on in this podcast, we've all kind of found our niche.
Oh, dear.
I tend to lean towards more of the Mormon stuff.
Yeah.
You for some reason, love to pick on Indian gods, Hindu gods, and Uncle Mark brings the dumb.
It's true.
You go with what you know.
It's true.
And also, Uncle Mark is the one who always likes to tempt the most dangerous people in the world to blow us up. So, Uncle, what do you have for us, Uncle Mark?
It's true. I just love to flirt with that sort of danger. And, as far as the dumb, you work in the medium you have. So,
yeah.
Guys, we do go on and on about all manner of Christians and Mormons, as Doug was saying, and their dizzying collection of holy books and how we've found them wanting, right? And We've oftentimes had a laugh at the head-scratching, air quotes, miracles found therein on too many occasions to recount here. Please see our entire catalog. But guys, we've been a little neglectful of our cousins of the book, haven't we? The Muslims and their little Bible, the Quran. So we're talking about a miracle today, but before we get into that, for anyone somehow unfamiliar with this particular piece of biblical fanfic, the Quran began to be, air quotes, revealed to a guy named Mohammed around 621 ACE, and continually, nearly every day for the next 23 years. That's right, this 600-page book was received in near daily drips and drabs for 23 years, so he must have written it all down, right? No. Muhammad couldn't read or write, but it's theorized that some of his friends could, and scribbled the daily distributions on whatever was lying around, which included leaves and bones, scraps of paper, cloth if they had any. Who gathered all of this hot detritus and scraps and collected it? Nobody really knows. The whole of the thing wasn't gathered up and compiled for decades. So prior to this, it was purely an oral, memorized, or paraphrased bunch of randomness. So,
hey, quick, grab me a bone. I need to write this down.
Hey, quick, somebody write this somewhere.
I don't know that we just remember it.
Just remember it. It's going to be important someday. Way more important than you can even imagine. So
don't worry though. We'll get everything right. I've got a pretty darn good memory.
So now that we've established how there can't possibly be any problems with this narrative chain of custody of all the scraps and piles of leaves, the most perfect book ever was written on by countless different people. Let's talk about a few things Mohammed wrote about himself in this holy book, his miracles. And I should make clear when I say wrote, kind of said.
Just claimed.
Yeah. Now, as we'll explore, there are a lot of miracles the book Mohammed wrote attributes to its protagonist, Mohammed, but many Muslims consider these 5 big ones the main ones. Are you ready, guys?
Oh, I'm excited. I know a couple of them, but I don't know. I don't think I could name 5, so I'm pretty
Okay,
stoked.
well, first, the journey from Mecca to Jerusalem, and then heaven and back to Mecca in one night, known as the Isra and Miraj, or night journey, an earthly journey that would normally have taken a month each way in the year 621.
It only takes a month to go from Mecca to Jerusalem and heaven?
Yeah, the heaven part I was unable to calculate because it isn't.
Because it doesn't appear on Google Maps?
Exactly.
That's right.
It seems to be a particularly strange triangle.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's pretty impressive, one night for a 2-month plus whatever journey.
Yeah, that's good.
Next, throwing sand in the eyes of his enemies at the Battle of Hunain, causing them to go blind, which hardly seems miraculous since sand being thrown into eyes is classic beach bully tactics performed on the regular, even to this day.
That seems pretty pedestrian, to be perfectly honest. How many guys did he do this to?
Well, when you see what the miracle I'm going to talk about is, it's going to feel even more pedestrian. So next, increasing a tiny bit of water to let his 300 thirsty companions drink. Not a bad trick in the rather parched Arabian Peninsula.
Sure.
But Jesus could have turned that...
Feels like a little rip-off of Jesus, though.
Yeah, but Jesus could have turned that into wine, so advantage Christianity.
Right, yeah.
So next, the Quran itself is considered by some Muhammad's only real and truly important miracle. Yes, a really boring book that nobody wrote down, actually, for like 40 years. And this coming from an ex-Mormon is considered so miraculous by Muslims, most consider it to actually be the living word of God.
Wow.
Now, there are also quite a few other miracles true believers insist Muhammad performed. They claim at least 100, which is more than Jesus. That may be that they might be of interest to our listeners. So I sorted through all 100 for a little tasting dish of the extremely weird and the very often totally useless of the marvelous magical manifestations of Mohammed, Mecca's madman of miracles. So,
is it going to be better than throwing sand in eyes and making a book? Because so far I'm not that impressed, to be honest.
we'll see.
I can do one of those two things.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do both if you don't actually have to write the book.
That's right.
So let's
say
see.
it.
There was telling two trees that were in his way to move, which they obligingly did.
Oh.
So I guess Muhammad was like a rook. He could only move in straight lines.
Yeah, exactly.
He spit in a guy's blind eye and it got better. So one up that, Jesus.
There you go. Well, and also, like, that's good if, like, you accidentally blinded the wrong person with the sand, then you can fix it.
Yeah. You're the disease and the cure. His companions could hear his food talking and praising God before Muhammad ate it, which is a nightmarish image to consider.
Yeah.
What does hummus sound like when it talks?
Praise Allah. He understood the language of the animals. That's really cool, huh, guys?
Oh, there you go. Little
since
Doolittle action.
One of the tenets on day 3 of the Hajj, the journey to Mecca each Muslim must make during their lifetime, is the halal slaughter of a goat. He didn't really give a shit about what they had to say, I suppose.
Huh.
He yelled at a mountain to stop having an earthquake underneath him, and it obeyed. So that's cool.
That's a good one, sure.
He could speak and hear dead people, so that's not a crazy thing.
All right.
And very importantly, he did not cast a shadow, his followers say. So it's a really good miracle for proving something.
Such a strange resume of miracles.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not done. But most critically, he once had to comfort a palm tree that was crying inconsolably because he had stopped leaning on it. So apparently Muhammad saw himself as something as a cross between Jesus and the Lorax. Why not? But, dear uncles, did you notice in the first group of 5 of his most important miracles that I mentioned only 4? I'm certain you caught my little trick, did you not?
I don't know how to count.
That's one of your miracles.
Leaving things out. It is the miracle I left off that list that I want to discuss today. That's right, old chums. If you thought I was sidestepping while you were expecting bisecting, it's the bi-hemispherical lunar miracle, Mohammed splitting the motherfucking moon. Now, this is where I would have had Doug play Y'all Ready for This on his phone. But stupid Andrew says we can't get sued anymore. So it's totally true, you guys. It says so right in the gripping edge-of-your-seat narrative of the most perfect book ever written about the guy performing the miracle by the guy performing the miracle. Let's go there now. In Surah Al-Qamar 54, 1-2, it says, "The hour has come near, and the moon has split in two. And if they see a miracle, they turn away and say, quote, passing magic." The end. It's all right there, guys. Game, set, match.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What did I just hear? I'm very confused.
But what does all this truth mean? Well, here's how most Muslims and Muslim apologists interpret those two cryptic sentences in a more fleshed out version of the story, which I paraphrase very much for brevity here. The miracle of the splitting of the moon occurred before the migration to Medina upon the demands of the pagans with the permission of God, and it was shown by the Prophet Muhammad. The pagans demanded of Muhammad, "If you are truly a prophet that has been appointed by Allah, then split the moon in half. Let it be such a way that one half will appear over Mount Abu Kubais, and the other half will be seen over Mount Qaikyan." The Prophet Muhammad asked, "If I do, will you become Muslims?" The pagans, known liars, right, said they would. On the 14th night, when the moon was full, the Prophet Muhammad wanted Almighty Allah to give him the miracle which the pagans demanded from him. When the Gabriel informed the Prophet Muhammad that God had accepted his prayer, he announced it to the Meccans, and so the pagans witnessed the splitting of the moon on the 14th night. When Almighty God let the moon split in half, one half standing over Mount Abu Kubais and the other half over Mount Qaikyan, the Prophet Muhammad shouted at all to bear witness. However, the pagans, somewhat astonishingly, said, "Muhammad cast a spell on us." Some of them also said, if Muhammad had cast a spell on us, then he couldn't have cast a spell on everyone. Let us ask the wayfarers who came from the surrounding areas if they saw what we saw. They asked the people who came from everywhere, and I like the everywhere. Yes, we also did see the moon in that state. We saw the moon as split. They informed that the moon was split. Among the people who came from everywhere and had seen the moon split, there was no one who had not seen the moon split. However, the pagans somehow still refused to become Muslims and to believe by saying this is a prevalent magic. So, to recap, the unbelievers were being mean to Muhammad, and he asked God to give them a sign, which he provided in the form of splitting the nearest planet in half, and they still didn't believe. Cool story.
Yeah.
So let's
Just
tackle
goes
this.
to show, if you got a non-believer, don't try to convert them. Just blow them up. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, that's probably your best course of action. So,
And no mention of the tides that would have resulted from a
Right?
split
I
moon.
was thinking about that too. It'd be
Well,
cool.
we'll
You could
get there. We'll
the
get there.
surfing action would be amazing.
So let's tackle this lunacy point by point. First of all, to the claims that people all over the known world saw the moon break in distinct halves and separate by what must have been thousands of miles. No, they did not. There are two sources for this claim. One is the Quran itself, accompanied by writings of non-contemporary faithful Muslims, none of whom would have been alive to see the event. The other is the only foreign source, and even that's not exactly clear, that is cited by apologists is a single, weirdly composed and compiled manuscript of unknown authorship and unknown origin in an obscure collection in London titled Kisat Shakruti Firmad, and it is described thusly in one of the collection's catalogs. And I quote, a fabulous account of the first settlement of the Muhammadans in Malabar under King Shakruti Kraganor, a contemporary of Muhammad, who was converted to Islam by the miracle of the division of the moon. Which is a catchy title. Note the work the term fabulous account is doing in that first sentence. that this is the only non-Quranic other source from an entire world full of people, Persians, Egyptians, Indians, Mayans, Japanese, Celts, Pacific Islanders, Incas, Hopis, werewolves, etc., anxiously watching the moon intently every night for signs and omens, and somehow not seeing it break the fucking half. Just one weird story written by a Muslim source long after the fact that an Indian king converted to Islam, and that's it. Those are the only sources.
Well, that is more supporting evidence than the Book of Mormon has.
It's crazy, the similarities, isn't it?
It's equal supporting evidence.
Yeah, the witnesses. So, nobody else saw it, and by Muhammad's own account, the ones who did thought it was some kind of parlor trick. So, now to the reality of splitting our closest cosmic dance partner in half. Let's give our friend Mohammed a tiny bit of the benefit of the doubt, since he had no clear idea what the moon actually is. Did he know it's a spherical planet? No. As the moon is tidally locked to the Earth, we only ever see its one side, and most cultures at the time thought it was a disk. Maybe if it rotated, he'd have known it was a ball, but I don't think he did.
Okay.
He certainly didn't know how gigantic it is, as in his sky it was rather tiny. Though the Arabs were among the first to understand the Earth was a sphere, it appears they concluded that after Muhammad's time. Mm-hmm. Our home sphere, Earth, is 12,742 kilometers in diameter, and though it's smaller at a diameter of 3,474 kilometers, the moon is still huge. It has a surface area just a little less than that of all of Asia. The moon has a volume of 21.9 billion cubic kilometers. Yes, that's a lot, especially when you know that a significant portion of that inner volume is a molten metal core, a blazing hot mess likely to become quite visible once its dusty covering is suddenly snapped in half. So that's
You'd
just
think
part
so,
of
but it's like biting into a Gushers.
Yeah, it's got a liquid center that you would be sure to notice if you bit into it. So,
or like if you cut Doug in half.
I have a liquid center.
He does have a liquid, but it's not molten. At the beginning of the Quranic verse, it says, "The hour has come near, and the moon has split in two." And I found another pretty amazing Muslim apologetic attached to that. By the way, guys, we read a lot of apologetics, Christian, Mormon, and oh my God, the Mormon ones are just so fucking sad. But the Muslim ones may be even sadder. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's just awful. Anyway, this modern apologetic connects the splitting of the moon to another Quranic verse about the Day of Judgment. That is, I quote, he asks, when will be the day of resurrection? So when the sight shall be dazed, and the moon will be eclipsed, and the sun and the moon will be joined together. Okay, so try to follow the logic here. The apologists claim this tangentially proves the moon was indeed split in half because modern science confirms that the sun and moon will be joined, as claimed in the verse above. Boom, lending some sort of thrice-removed proof that the Quran is right about everything planetary, so the moon was split in two.
Boom goes the IED.
So, how does science prove the sun and moon will be joined? The apologetic claims that the moon is growing more distant from the Earth by a few centimeters a year, and that at some point it will get pulled away and fly through the tens of millions of miles and fall into the sun. Except modern science does not agree with that at all. While it's true that the moon is trying to slip out of the party unnoticed, like a certain uncle I know who is also me, it will, in around 50 billion years, reach a point of balance between pulling away and being pulled back, and orbit the Earth once every 47 days rather than the current 27. So it won't actually fly off into the sun at all. But sadly for this super solid apologetic, 45 billion years before this great proof of the Quran occurs, our aging star will become a red giant and fucking melt our neighborhood and then inhale it. Do we reward the normally ferociously anti-science Muslim apologists half a point because the sun and moon will indeed meet, just not how they insist? Gonna go with no.
Yeah, well, that's tricky.
So several other modern apologists use science-generated photography of the moon's surface to argue that the seismically active, bruised and battered surface of the moon shows evidence of the 7th century magic trick in the form of large scar-like valleys called rills, R-I-L-L-E-S. Planetary geologists have sound explanations for how these formed during ancient periods of volcanic activity on the moon, but they are the hem where God put the damn thing back together after splitting it in half to fail to convince a bunch of pagans to become Muslims, and nobody else in the world, full of moon watchers, noticed it at all. So,
yeah, that was cool of God to do the miracle, even though in his omnipotence he obviously recognized that this was not going to work.
Yeah. It's a wasted miracle is still a miracle, I suppose, but it doesn't help that the lunar mending apologists, that they keep insisting there are several valleys over 9 kilometers deep on the moon, when our very well-charted neighbor's deepest ditch is just half a kilometer deep. So again, to recap, a bunch of dildos were laughing at Mohammed for claiming to be a prophet, and so he got all the feels and cracked a planet in half. Nobody else credibly saw this cosmic cataclysm, and it didn't really work because most of the people he showed were like, meh, magic trick. And without exception, after every torturous, science-twisting, wackadoo apologetic I read, they all conclude with something like this. You know, miracles are weird, and maybe the moon only split for those few people standing around Muhammad and not the whole world. And hey, if you need miracles to confirm your faith is shit, so this is really all your fault. So it's all of them kind of end with that. And so that's it. At least you tried, Muslim apologists.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll have... Yeah.
Tearing the moon in half is like Thanos level power. Like, that's a significant thing. I don't even think Jesus claimed anything that grandiose.
Yeah, I don't even think Chris Angel can do that.
So at least you tried.
A huge fan of our show.
Yeah,
maybe he's a huge fan of the show. And Chris, thanks for your patronage. Maybe they'll have better luck using science to explain away the sad, weepy tree that needed a hug after it got lonely for Muhammad. So that's splitting the moon, guys. A real thing that totally happened to end.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for that. I'm going to go hug a tree.
Let's make a moon and split.
Damn it, I was about to say that.
Moving on.
Well, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Mark.
There are normal people in the world, and then there are special people in the world. Yes. You are a special person.
You've been hearing the word special since you were a kid, huh?
I have.
Good.
Usually from psychiatrists.
And obviously the best people in the world are our patrons who give us money so that we can live in the lifestyle to which we've become accustomed. But not disconnected to those fine people are another group of people. And they are...
Those are the Mandalorians.
Oh,
Those
yes.
are not the Latter-day Saints, but the olden day saints.
Yes, indeed. And I've got an olden day saint she's one of the big ones. Let's just put it that way. She is one of only 7 or 8 or 9 women name-checked in the super important Catholic canon of the Mass. Oh. I got conflicting reports from different articles about the number, and since I don't really know what the canon of the Mass is, I don't have time for another rabbit hole. We'll just never know.
It's what they it's what they shoot the Eucharist out of, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Pack it in there and blammo. Everybody gets a piece.
It's a mass cannon.
That's right.
You get a T-shirt and a wafer
and a little piece of dead Jew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. However, just so that you know, one of these women is the mother of dragons, the mother of God herself, the Blessed Virgin Mary. So it's a pretty good list to be on.
All right.
Anyway, you and many of our listeners may not even know that you've heard of her. But I'm guessing most listeners have heard the Neapolitan folk song devoted to her. It was recorded by Mario Lanza, Enrico Caruso, Andrea Bocelli, and even Eris Presley. Eris. That's Aaron Elvis Presley, all mixed together. I can do that. I'm that good with language that I can just squish things together. Anyway, the Elvis version is very interesting because he somehow gets way off the rhythm towards the end, and it sounds like he's just taking some liberties, but then he gets so far off and never quite makes it back, and it's totally bizarre.
Maybe
That's
it was
probably
the pills.
because of it was the pills.
Yeah, exactly. However, folks from our generation and a little before probably heard it first from a handsome young cat named Tom, who serenaded us as he paddled along the water in a tin tub, and who then spent the next 10 minutes pursuing a mouse named Jerry in an episode titled Cat and Duplicat. The song itself, maybe I'll favor you with a little bit of it. Well, no, I won't. Santa Lucia. Santa Lucia. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Sul mare luccica l'astro d'argento.
Wow.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Wow.
I could keep going. Maybe that's my segment.
I really hope that's in the public domain songbook.
It is. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
I did check.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, maybe we should do that. Uncle Dan sings the Neapolitan hits. That's the spin-off podcast.
Patreon goal.
Yeah,
Elvis,
exactly.
Elvis sang that in Italian?
He did. You should look it up.
Lucia.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating and not good. Anyway, actually, what's funny about that song is that though it invokes Santa Lucia numerous times, it seems to be just about a guy inviting some people on his boat on a pleasant evening and then randomly saying Santa Lucia a bunch of times. But that's the thing about saints. You can apparently just call on them whenever you want to. So is she the patron saint of boats? No. Nice evenings? Far from it. Baritone serenading? Nope. She's just... Now, she is the patron saint of authors, cutlers, glaziers, laborers, martyrs, peasants, saddlers, salesmen, and stained glass workers. The closest I could come to why the boatman would be invoking her is that she's also the patron of a town in Italy called Perugia, except that Perugia is entirely landlocked, so the boat probably wasn't that interesting.
Weird. She's a real working class saint, isn't she?
She really is. She really is. But not working class in her life. So who is Saint Lucy? What makes her tick? Well, since the correct answer is that there are no firsthand or even remotely contemporary accounts of her, it's probably as likely as not that she never even existed. But that's no fun. So let's tell her stories, because there are several of them, as they should be told, with no care taken about the truth.
That's right. That has not, a person existing or not, has not stopped the Catholics even for a second before.
No. We're just going to plow through. We're not even going to pump the brakes.
No care taken about the truth should be the tagline of this podcast.
Indeed. Okay. So our girl Lucy was born in Syracuse, Utah. Sorry, that's Syracuse, Sicily, in the late 200s. Let's call it 283. Her parents were noble and wealthy, because that's how saint origin stories go. Her dad died when she was young, leaving her and her mom to make their own way in the hard-scrabble mean streets of wealthy Syracuse. Now, what do we remember about the Roman Empire in the late 200s to early 300s?
Orgies.
That's right. The Diocletianic persecution.
That's right.
Emperor Diocletian, in his push to make Rome great again, had outlawed that dopey upstart cult called Christianity, feeding them to the lions and whatnot, all that sort of business. So, it turns out that our girl Lucy was a Christian. Oh no! What is a girl to do? Her mama, in a bid to keep her girl safe and well cared for, arranged to marry her off to a nice pagan boy. But there was something her mom didn't know. Like pretty much every female saint in Christendom, Lucy had inexplicably committed herself and her virginity to God.
Inexplicably or inadvertently?
Well, both. I think the thing is that when you're writing a saint story, you don't want a saint what's had the business. Right. You don't want an already chewed piece of gum as your saint.
Oh, God.
So no, she had promised to remain that perfect, untouched, chaste, pure as the driven snow, unsexed, never defiled because penises ruin women forever virgin. Basically, that's what really good women do.
Bye, female listeners.
Yeah, well, no, to blame the church, not me. I'm just reporting here. So that was a bit of a pickle that her mom had put her in because she was now betrothed.
Although no one ever put a pickle in her.
Boom, baby!
You guys got this. I'm out.
Nope, you stick around, you. Lucy and her mother had other problems, though. Her mom had a chronic, horrible disease. In one case, one of the accounts I read, it was a blood disease. I don't know why they added that little detail, but okay. So Saint Agatha had been martyred about 50 years earlier, and there was a shrine to her in nearby Catania. So they loaded up the truck and headed out to Catania to pray to Saint Agatha for her mom to get better. Well, Saint Agatha visits Lucy in a dream and says, guess what? Your mom's going to be healed, and as a special prize, you, Lucy, are going to be as cool as I am, and all of the good things that happened to me, including delightful martyrdom and forever sainthood, will one day be yours. Lucy persuades her mother, in gratitude for this great miracle, persuades her mother to give all of her wealth to the poor. So see how good she is?
I'll take that.
Again, when you're writing a saint story, these are all easy. These are all the sort of easy ticks that you can check into
exactly
check marks. So, unfortunately, her betrothed hears about this. Hears about his dowry, essentially, or whatever, the money that he should be inheriting, getting given away, and becomes furious and complains to Pascasius.
He was the worst.
I'm going to say Pascasius, the governor of Syracuse at the time, and not only complains to him about this whole thing, but tattles on her for being Christian.
Ooh.
Yeah, what a little bitch, right?
Yeah.
Which is why he's not even named in this story. He's just her betrothed. Pascasius orders her to burn a sacrifice to the emperor to show that she is a good little pagan girl like everybody else, but she refuses like a moron. Like, what the fuck? Just burn a thing. It's not that hard. But no, she's true to herself and to her God, and she is sentenced, because of this rebellion, to sex. She is sentenced to sex at a brothel, i.e. rape, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be rape.
So this is a weird story. Anyway, guards come to take her, but cannot budge her. Eventually, one version of the story has 1,000 men and 50 oxen pulling at her to try and get her to go to this brothel. And no dice. They can't get her to move. So they decide that she's going to die, and they bring a whole bunch of firewood around her because she is frozen to the spot. But they can't get the firewood to light. So, she's foiled them again. And she's there talking all kind of Christian smack about them. You know, if you do this, you're going to burn in hell, blah, 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 all that sort of thing. So one of the soldiers, kind of wanting the bullshit to stop, slits her throat.
Oh, that took a turn.
Nothing doing. She heals right up and keeps on blathering. Then there's another story about them poking out her eyes, and then boop, they pop right back in. So joke's on you. Of course, there's an alternate story in which she poked out her own eyes because this would have happened earlier in the story. But there was an alternate story about how she was being pursued by a persistent wooer who kept talking about how he liked her eyes. So she popped him out so that he wouldn't be, so he would stop wooing her. I'm sure some of our lady listeners can relate.
Wait, I feel like we're talking that Dan. I kind of dozed for a second, and you're reviewing the newest Saw movie. Like it's
torture porn goes back a ways. Guys, this is not a new thing.
Yeah.
Finally, a Christian priest gives her last rites, and only then did she die.
Oh, that's sweet.
So there is the question of why the fuck did he do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. She's doing great. You don't need to do that. She is fine.
Don't read that spell and I will live forever.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, keep them away from me.
Well, who do you do? And then she's dead.
Wow.
Other stories about her include her feeding Christians, hiding in the catacombs, and this story includes her not knowing how she's going to get all of this food into the catacombs and also be able to see because it's dark. So she invents a wreath that goes around her head with candles coming up off of it, which is why on her Saint's Day, in a lot of parts of the world, they celebrate by putting a wreath on their head with candles.
All right.
Or one of the girls represents her with a wreath of candles. I'm sure someone's hair is caught on fire.
Oh,
I'm
totally.
Absolutely positive.
Oh my God, of course. It's yeah.
So there you go. So her Saint's Day is December 13th, which,
coming
as you
right
know,
coming right up,
is the winter solstice. Or
is it?
rather, was the winter solstice before they started fucking with the calendar. So now it's no longer the winter solstice, but she's still used to celebrate, to sort of as a festival of light. Her Saint's Day is used as a light festival because it's the darkest time of the year and everybody's depressed and whatever. But now it's used also as a sort of precursor to Christmas, and it's like a warm up.
I refuse to say Happy St. Lucy's Day. Happy holidays.
Yeah. This is the war on St. Lucia's Day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Fuck you, Lucia. They even claim that her name kind of comes from the Latin lux or lux, which is light, and so there you go. Anyway, so the fact that she's all about light makes her very popular in places like Scandinavia, where it gets oppressively dark. And that's about it. She's a revered saint who very clearly none of this stuff happened, and they basically just took the standard saint playbook and went straight down the barrel with it.
Yeah, we talked about when we talked about Saint Bibiana way back. I think it was episode 22. Saint Bibiana, very similar outline here. She was sentenced to sex, meaning rape. Hers was a particular sort of thing because they tried to lesbianize her. Remember that?
Oh.
And then
remember that.
But keep talking.
I don't listen to this show. I have no idea what we've talked about.
Even as it's happening live, Dan doesn't listen to it. So
I'm not paying attention
it's a
at
similar
all.
playbook where apparently God is obsessed with nothing more than a female quote unquote virginity, and so the worst thing you can do is take that away.
Is defile it,
defile it. So God has prima nocta, apparently, the right of prima nocta
exactly.
for all young women in the world. So she joins the host of the saints, I suppose.
Yep, there she goes, raised up into the canon. So
you shoot her out of the cannon of the mass. So be ready for some overspray.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
let's move on.
Well, fellas,
Oh,
you know, I want to. I did skip a thing in our St. Lucie in my little write up of St. Lucie, which is that I want everybody to be aware that if you see her represented in art, a whole bunch of the time you will see, because of the whole eye gouging out thing, you will see her holding eyeballs in some way or other. Either there was one that I saw where she had just eyeballs, not balls, they were like eyes with eyelids on them, on a platter. That was cute. And there was one where she was holding flowers, but instead of flowers, it was eyeballs on the stem.
Jesus.
They get creative. The artists, they get creative.
It's a little Pan's Labyrinth vibe going on.
Yeah,
it's so great that Catholics grow up without any issues from seeing these images as children, right?
100%. Yeah,
They're the most issueless people in the world. Next, the Jews.
Yeah, exactly. However, we have some saints who give to us who their eyeballs stay firmly planted in their heads, hopefully, and we need to thank them. So our newest patrons, thanks so much to Tiffany, Angry Macface, and Jim. And then I think it's my turn. I owe a patron saint, an improvised patron saint, to Joanna.
Hey,
and Joanna, your patron saint is Saint Otis of Reading, Pennsylvania. Get it? Otis Reading, but it's not. It's Otis of Reading. Anyway, he is the patron saint of board games, of cruciferous vegetables, and mammals that lay eggs. So, congratulations.
The monotremes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Pulled out that one. That's great.
He doesn't.
if the
He
Jim
doesn't
who
get called
donated-
up. He doesn't get called up much, but when he does, holy shit! You know what I mean?
It's important.
Look out!
If the Jim who donated is Jim Jordan, you can have your money back.
And it is not. And so there you go. Thank you so much to all of our donors. Uncle Mark, tell them how they can how those of them what don't give us money can become those of them what do.
Well, all you got to do is skedaddle over to get onto your internet, and then when you get there, go to howtoheretic.com. Hit the Support Us tab. That takes you to Patreon. There will be squares in which to enter data, some of which are your credit card number or one that you find at the bar. And then there's another number, another box to put in a number that's practically infinite. There's no upper limit. Put in what you want, what you can for a weekly donation, and we'll love you for it.
Yeah. It's a way to show us that you appreciate what we do by buying us a beer.
We work hard for. Well, we put a little work in for you.
We work a moderate amount for your moderate amount of entertainment, and you can give us a moderate amount of money as a sign of your joy.
And that's right. And if you can't do that, go to any place you can give us 5 stars. And we're on Spotify now, Stitcher, iTunes, any place you can do that, and fill our sky with stars to guide us to you. And there we will be.
Moving on. Hey, Uncle Mark.
Uh-huh.
You know how we were raised in a cult?
I sure do. I mean, I never think about it, but now that you bring it up.
You know what?
It's so funny. I shied away from the word cult for Mormonism for the longest time, just because it feels too big. And I know that one of the definitions of a cult has to do with just how demographically large it is or small it is. But for the most part, I think it's pretty culty. But it's not. Yeah. But it can. But the version that we had, the downtown Mormonism.
Yeah.
The Brighamite Mormonism.
Your city Mormonism.
Yeah. Your workaday Mormonism. Not as culty as some other offshoots.
At least they were desperate not to appear so.
And it may not be as culty as some, but it's definitely cult adjacent.
Oh, yeah. It was a cult. We were raised in a cult.
Yeah, we were.
However, it could have been worse. And Uncle Doug, I think you're here to tell us all about that.
I am indeed. And well, Uncles, it has become my private goal to try and prevent this podcast from going full Mormon. You never want to go full Mormon. Yet I seem to be the most...
Or really any Mormon at all.
I seem to be the most serial violator of that mission. So when 2 very weird, very sad stories connected by our strange little desert cult hit the wires, I decided that rather than split them into two separate segments, I would cram them into one segment and get them out of the way.
Okay.
So, longtime listeners of this show know that your dear uncles can often find ourselves getting lost down ever stranger and darker rabbit holes. But even with that said, strap in.
Well, and are we going to issue a warning here that, Doug, there is an extreme level of violence in this?
I will when we get to that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Be warned, listeners, and it will include, I'm sure there'll be a mention of violence against children.
Yeah, well, when we get to that point, I will definitely issue a trigger warning. And a little bit of a trigger warning for the beginning here, but this has been in the headlines, so it's not going to surprise anybody.
Look, consider it. You don't have to do another one. It's just warning. There's a trigger. There are going to be triggers all over.
Well, there's about 30 seconds.
It's a story about Mormonism. Children are going to die. That is just. Please fucking just get used to that as a thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
Let's start it out. The first story in this sad and tragic murder of 9 Americans, 3 women and 6 kids in northern Mexico on November 8th, so just a couple weeks from when we're broadcasting.
Right.
The Mexican authorities have yet to identify the attackers, but it appears to be a criminal group called La Linea, which is currently at war with elements of the Sinaloa cartel, and that this group of Americans was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were traveling in a caravan of 3 SUVs, which in hindsight seems like not a great idea in cartel country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The details are terrible. The gang stopped the caravan, and when one of the mothers got out to show them that they were a group of families, they shot her at point blank in front of her children, and then they opened fire on the SUVs and set them ablaze, killing the 9. One young boy managed to get out and get a bunch of kids and hide them under a bush until the gang left.
Oh my
very,
God.
very sad story. But it turns out that this group of Americans are an offshoot of Mormonism that still practices polygamy. And the reasons that they found themselves in Mexico trace directly back to the founder of Mormonism, Joseph Smith, and the Stalin of Mormonism, Brigham Young. So, as we have covered many times on this show, back in 1830 in upstate New York, a very shady and very horny young man named Joseph Smith founded the Mormon religion based mostly on a crappy knockoff of the Bible, whose principal claims were laughably disprovable at the time of writing and have not aged well. Joseph, you see, was here to chew bubblegum and fuck minors, and he was all out of bubblegum. So, as Fawn Brody put it in her seminal biography of Joseph, no man knows my search history. He was No Man Knows My History. Great book.
Yeah.
He was too much the Puritan to just simply fuck his way across the Midwest. He had to find a way to make it holy. And wouldn't you know it, he found a loophole in the only book his family owned, a King James Bible, big enough to cram a girl on the eve of turning 15 through. Fortunately for Joe, many of the Old Testament prophets were polygamist. Solomon even famously had 700 wives and 300 concubines, which Joseph considered a good start. And so, although the exact date is disputed, as early as 1830, Joseph began taking plural wives. His first victim, and being a 14-year-old girl staying with the Smiths as a paid servant, she was most definitely a victim, was Fanny Alger, but she was just the beginning. At first, Joseph kept all this secret, including from his wife, and he kept it to kind of his innermost gaggle of fellow lechers. He even took to sending his good friends on multi-year missions abroad so he could secretly marry and bed their wives that he'd taken a fancy to. Really good guy.
Well, but it's a good ploy.
It worked.
Yeah.
It was effective.
It's good to be the king.
It's good to be the king. Finally, under some pressure from the increasing number of people who Joseph had wronged by fucking their wives and daughters, Joseph recorded a revelation known as Doctrine and Covenants, section 132, that lays out in great detail how and why polygamy not just should, but must be practiced by good Mormons as a fundamental prerequisite to entering the kingdom of God. This section is still on the books to this day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the most brilliant thing about Mormonism right now is how much current Mormons are like, we don't do that. That is not a thing we do.
How dare you, sir?
And yet, if you're like, well, but is
Can I borrow your book?
Yeah. Can we look at that for just a second?
So, subsequently, an angry group of men killed Joseph in 1844, as we covered back in episode 96, mostly because of polygamy. And Brigham Young then took the church out of Utah, outside the boundaries of the United States, as we covered back in episode 97, mostly because of polygamy. So polygamy and all the baggage that comes with it is as old and fundamental to Mormonism as is the Book of Mormon and mayonnaise, and is simultaneously the source of its greatest power and its greatest weakness. Without the motivation of polygamy, rapey fanatics like Brigham Young, Parley Pratt, and John D. Lee would have found some other avenue for their devotion and their semen, and Mormonism would have probably faded into the obscurity of the burnt-over district. However, without the stain of polygamy, the modern Mormon church would be far more powerful and dangerous than it already is. So, anyway,
they're in a real pickle.
They're in a bit of a pickle.
It's a conundrum.
Pickle here. Yeah.
Once Brigham realized that there was no escaping the manifest destiny of the United States, he set about trying to get statehood. However, the federal government was uncompromising in its stance that polygamy has got to go. And so Brigham's second successor, Wilford Woodruff, officially banned polygamy in 1890, with a manifesto, by the way, which is a little more tepid than a full revelation. And Utah was granted statehood 6 years later. That's not the end of the story, though, as several splinter groups broke from the church in order to continue their inbreeding programs. Many of these groups decided to continue the long tradition of fleeing the United States in order to keep fucking minors, with several groups fleeing north to Canada, where they can still be found today, and several heading south to Mexico, which brings us full circle to the tragic events of November 8th, and how a group of fundamentalist Mormon polygamists found themselves in cartel country.
Yeah, let's not forget that the initial caravan of Mormons leaving the Midwest to come to Salt Lake City was them fleeing the country.
Yeah.
This was Mexico at the time.
To continue to practice polygamy.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting little side note here. In one of those polygamous colonies in 1907 in Chihuahua, Mexico, was born a bouncing little white baby named George Wilkin Romney.
Yep.
Father of failed presidential candidate and current spineless Utah Senator Willard Mitt Romney.
That's right.
Willard. Can we just call him Willard, please? Because that is a terrible name, and I love it.
However, the victims of this gang that died the other day were members of the LeBaron sect of splinter Mormons, which ironically was its own kind of crime syndicate back in the 1970s. Local listeners will no doubt recognize that name because it was all over the news at the time. The then leader of the sect, Ervil LeBaron, the most Utah name in history.
Yeah.
Ervil
LeBaron ordered the killings of several rivals based on another horrid Mormon belief, blood atonement, that Uncle Mark covered back in episode 50. I feel like this podcast is collapsing on itself.
Yeah.
Eventually it will go supernova and we will start a cult. We will all be cult leaders.
The Mormon singularity will occur.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Ervil was sentenced to life in prison and died in prison in 1981 in the Utah State Penitentiary, which brings us to the second Mormon story of the day about another murderer who died in that self-same penitentiary only days ago, Ronald Watson Lafferty. Ron Lafferty had been on death row for 34 years for the brutal murders of his sister-in-law, Brenda White Lafferty, and her 18-month-old daughter, and that he committed along with his brother Dan in 1984. Ron had just recently lost his last appeal, and a date for his execution was being set when he died.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What was the method of his execution? Any guesses?
Firing squad.
That's right. Fucking firing squad. Because this is Utah, and we're not just going to hand over the title of craziest state without a fight.
I actually like that we do firing squad.
Well, we don't need more.
Oh, that's right.
So he had
No, I actually think that if I were being executed, I would choose firing squad over other things. I think it's pretty humane.
When they said aim, would you just start
romantic
whittling?
Anyway?
Yeah,
Yes.
right. So his brother, pardon me, his brother Dan tried to kill himself during the original trial, and so their trials had to be split, with Ron receiving the death penalty and Dan getting life in prison. Dan is also incarcerated at a different section of the same prison. So the story of the murders is as horrific as it is bizarre, and is told in incredible detail in John Krakauer's 2003 book, Under the Banner of Heaven.
Yeah.
If you have not read that book, I cannot recommend it highly enough if you want to understand the violent underculture within Mormonism. The Lafferty family was based in Utah County, which is the true locus of the Mormon faith. In what at the time and place was actually a pretty modest progeny. The family consisted of the parents and just 6 brothers. That's a pretty small family for 1970s Mormonism.
Yeah.
They were always pretty fundamentalist, but somewhere in the late 70s, brothers Ron and Dan took things up to 11. They began attending a heretical group with some other fundamentalists called, modestly, the School of the Prophets, that aimed to steer Mormonism back to its roots, which of course means polygamy.
Right.
Yeah.
There was one problem, though. Youngest brother Alan had married his sweetheart Brenda, who by all accounts was pretty opinionated and headstrong, not exactly 2 attributes welcomed in fundamentalist Mormonism.
Or fundamentalist anyism.
Anyism, exactly. As Ron and Dan tried to convince their brothers and their brothers' wives to take up polygamy, it was Brenda who led the resistance, eventually banning them from her house and forbidding Alan from attending the School of the Prophets. So, Even though she was the youngest Lafferty wife, she was she was the one the others depended on to stave off the rising tide of stupidity. But as Ron became more fanatical, he became abusive, and it was Brenda who convinced Ron's wife to leave him and take their 6 kids and flee. Around the same time, Ron and Dan's abusive behavior and beliefs proved too much even for Mormonism, and they were excommunicated. So, now fully isolated, they started getting weird. And I mean really weird.
Now they're getting weird.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you want to see a cult reveal its true self, push it out into the wilderness for a while.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
They bought shares in the Dream Mine that Uncle Mark covered back in episode 75. They stopped paying taxes and registering their vehicles, joining the predecessor to the Sovereign Citizen movement. Mm-hmm. They started receiving frequent revelations, which Ron started believing that his need to evacuate his bowels were promptings from the spirit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how else do you know?
Hey, man, everything happens for a reason.
I've had some pretty amazing bowel movements, so I don't know.
Yeah. Those are blessings from the Lord.
He has. I've been there.
For every one of them.
Been there holding my hands.
As the poo doula.
One time it's true. We'll talk about that another time.
Sure. God, will we?
Yeah.
They became obsessed with the legend of the One Mighty and Strong, which is a prophecy uttered by our old friend Joseph Smith back in 1832, while Fanny Alger was still a sex slave in his basement. The prophecy goes, quote, "It shall come to pass that I, the Lord God, will send one mighty and strong, holding the scepter of power in his hand, clothed with light for a covering, whose mouth shall utter the words, eternal words, while his bowels shall be a fountain of truth to set in order the house of God."
Did you just say his bowels?
His bowels shall be a fountain of truth. There's your bowel.
Let me tell you something. A bowel fountain is never a good thing. There's no time when that's an okay thing.
That was a pretty shitty cruise. I agree. So this prophecy, along with the White Horse prophecy, which we covered back in episode 68, still motivates young and dumb Mormons to this day, and it got the Lafferty Bros all a-frothing. There is one anecdote of them stopping traffic in an intersection as they did push-ups to demonstrate their might. But all the cardio in the world wouldn't shake the realization that their family was gone, their church had kicked them out, they were unemployable, they were in trouble with the law, and the further they went into their beliefs, the worse their lives got. And you know what? It was all that bitch Brenda's fault. And so coincidentally, Ron received a revelation in early 1984 that Brenda, her 18-month-old daughter, who would grow up to be just as much of a bitch as her mother, and 2 other people had to go. So this leads us to July 24th, 1984, Pioneer Day, which is kind of the most sacred day in Mormonism, especially in Utah County.
I don't know about sacred, but
celebratory.
Celebratory, yeah. It's our state holiday.
Yeah. So here's the trigger warning. The next minute or so of this podcast are very gruesome, and I am not kidding. If you are distressed by even a sanitized description of violence, you should skip ahead a little bit. So the 2 brothers had picked up a couple of drifters to help fund their impending getaway, and although not participants in the murders, they knew full well what was to come and would end up being important witnesses in the prosecutions. Ron and Dan knew that Brother Alan would not be home. Ron approached Brenda's house, knocked on the door. When she opened the door, he forced his way in, followed soon by Dan. Over the next few minutes, Brenda fought hard for her life, putting up a fight that caught the 2 brothers by surprise. They severely beat her, tried to strangle her with a vacuum cord, but when she wouldn't give up the fight, they finally slit her throat and let her bleed out on her floor. During the ordeal, she begged only for the life of her daughter. Then Dan entered the baby's room and, by his own account, apologized to her for what God was making them do, before slitting her throat so severely that she was effectively decapitated.
Ugh.
Yeah. They then headed to the next person on the list, Chloe Lowe, a friend of Brenda's, who was mercifully not home at the time. On their way to the final victim, they missed the turnoff to Richard Stowe's house. Stowe was the bishop who excommunicated the brothers. And instead of going back, they decided they had better get out of Dodge, and they headed to Nevada. The 2 were arrested in Reno on August 17th. In a trial that garnered national attention, the 2 brothers, now being tried separately because of mentioned Dan's suicide attempt, were found guilty and sentenced. Ron and Dan have remained unrepentant all these years and have maintained that they were only carrying out God's will. I am saddened by Ron's death only because I don't believe in hell, and I was hoping for a firing squad with terrible aim. His brother Dan, by all accounts, is suffering from the same health problems as his brother, so this sad, creepy, and violent chapter in Utah history might finally come to a close soon, and when it does, we will surely let you know.
I just feel like, look, your God sucks.
Big time.
If your God made you do all this shit, you had a miserable life, and then the last half of it is just going to be spent in prison, Yeah, that's a shitty God.
Yeah.
You failed at God.
And if you're a prophet, how did you miss the turnoff to the guy's house?
Exactly.
You're a fucking idiot, is what you are.
You would think that God would provide a sort of celestial GPS to help out, but
Yeah, I mean, the more detailed accounts of these two brothers, they're pretty fucking dumb.
yeah, not the
they're
sharpest.
pretty fucking dumb. Can I circle back one sec, Doug, to just so people understand a little bit more about the Mormons that were killed in Mexico? The problem is not that they were directly challenging the cartels. That's not what is understood, right?
No, they
it's
were
just
not at
that where they landed in the 19th century has now
become the cartel territory.
Exactly. They're in the borderlands where the cartels try to move a tremendous amount of shit across the border to meet American demand for drugs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just a series of accidents of history that they are where they are.
Yep.
And it's funny because most of those those sort of Mormon cult groups, they are American citizens.
Most of them have dual citizenship.
Dual citizens,
Yeah.
so they could just cross the border and live here, except that they have this polygamous thing going on, so they can't because that's criminalized here in the States.
Exactly. And it is just I guess the question is for religion in general and Mormonism in particular, what part of either of these sad and violent stories was made better by their religion?
Yeah.
Right?
None.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at least they get an eternal reward after they die, they think.
So, sorry for that bummer, guys.
Fresh planets for all my friends.
That's right. You get a planet, and you get a planet, and maybe not you, but you get a planet.
You just hope that Mohammed doesn't come along and break it in half. I guess that's the lesson
That would suck.
to take from this show this week. So, all right, well, with all that murder over with, let's move on.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's emotional roller coaster of a show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. If you've got your eyeballs on a platter, send us a pic at howtoheretic.com.
Or if you did not also see the moon split in half, because nobody did, leave us a voicemail about it at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. I'm also on Twitter at howtoheretic.
And many thanks to our awesome patrons.
And many thanks to our dearest Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thanks to you, friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.